So these are the techniques that are the most accessible, the ones that really are about the decisions you are making and when you have to take your turn. Here's a good one. All the characters are discussing something with the bandits that have surrounded them. And one of the bandits is really obnoxious. And most of the people at the table are not that interested in an immediate fight with the bandits. The bandits seem to know what they're doing. And this might not be really, I don't really feel like being killed by ugly bandits today. On the other hand, they want our money. So, when we're talking to we're going to talk to them a little bit and try to deal with it. One of the bandits is really obnoxious. And one of the players says, I throw my axe at him.
I have had this happen. Yeah.
But when you had that happen, how did we move into the system of resolution for ordering of actions? Right? Every role-playing game has some kind of system, simple or complex, for the ordering and execution of characters' actions.
Yeah.
So let's take one that is quite common. Roll for initiative. Well, that's very interesting. I throw my axe at him. Roll for initiative. No, I'm not going to roll for initiative. I threw my axe at him. It's in the air.
Yeah.
There's no initiative here. I want my to-hit roll.
Yeah.
And the DM says, no, it's a fight scene. Roll initiative. We'll find out if he got to go first when you were drawing out your axe.
Yeah.
Wait. No, there is no drawing out my axe. I threw my axe at him.
Yeah.
No, you didn't throw your axe at him. You only have the right to say, you drew your axe and threw it at him, and that drawing means we roll initiative. Do you see how the GM and the player are butting heads over the relationship of stated actions to resolution systems? And I will tell you right now that you can look in every single D&D book that was ever written in any edition by any author, and you are not going to find the answer to that question.
Right.
So, but every group either finds a way or they break down about it.
Yeah.
So it seems to me as though it's kind of important for us to realize, okay, you say, what is the point? Who cares? Why bother? And the answer is, because people get upset.
Yeah.
They feel bad. This was a big investment in time, wasn't it? An effort? We could have... This is perhaps a little too standard of a comment here, but we could have been watching porn. I mean, we didn't have to do this game thing. We're making up all these characters and crunching all these numbers and, getting into character and walking up and down corridors and worrying about trolls and stuff. We don't have to do that. We could have been watching porn.
Right.
So I went to all this work instead of watching porn. And now you're going to do this? Now you're going to make it difficult?
So what you're saying is that there are other ways to have fun. Like, why are we doing this if you're not letting me have any? Or like,
why are we doing this if we don't know how to do it?
Yeah.
And throwing the axe in the air, without the formal combat having been, established, so we don't know if we're supposed to roll initiative now or not. Is the axe in the air or not?
Yeah.
Right. If we can't even get that, then it's time for us to talk.
Yeah, definitely.
That's why we should talk about role-playing.
But I feel...
And if you want to go average gamer on me, I'll tell you the average gamer has been in that situation before.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that is one of the things that I found was missing in the traditional role-playing games that I've read, like Drakar och Demoner, for a Swedish example. Like, there are so many things about authority and about lines and veils that they don't say anything about at all.
Well, it's so strange because we could claim that there was an original golden age of role-playing where everybody played the best possible games and had the best possible time. Back in the days of the giants. Not in our weak iron, not in our weak age, or not in our poor suffering age, but back in the golden days when, the giants walked the earth and their dice were better than our dice and their role playing was better than our role playing. There must have been a table in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin that just glowed with the light of perfect role playing. Back then everybody, came back in the morning and D&D was sitting on the table. So we could be very romantic and say that perhaps the reason that they're not in those rule books is because for a lot of the people writing those rule books, they didn't have a problem with these things, so it never occurred to them. Oh. Now, we can actually say there's some truth to that without being too romantic. The fact that people design role-playing games in many cases is because they're having a really good time. And when you write down the procedures that you're using, or design some procedures as you go and write them down and make a game, basically, you probably aren't going to write down the things that you're doing well but don't know that you're doing well. You're just probably not going to write it down. So the idea for a person in an early game of RuneQuest to become invested in the political culture of their god, you can look in the rules of RuneQuest and you can see that if you take that expectation as explicit, a whole bunch of other little phrases start to make a lot of sense. But they don't say that anywhere because they just did it. They weren't going to be playing Bronze Age fantasy without the characters being invested in the political culture of their gods. They were all fans of the Odyssey and fans of the Iliad and fans of the Icelandic epics and fans of Persian mythology. Of course, everybody a hero is invested in the political culture of their god. So I think that's a fairly good example of, that's why they didn't write it in the book. They would.
It was obvious to them.
Yeah, it was obvious to them. And so you can be a little forgiving about how certain things aren't in the book. Then you can be less forgiving of texts which are imitative of those and do not bring any reflection into it. That you put your rules for vehicle chases into the game because a role-playing game has to have it.
Yeah, grapple rules.
Yeah, it has to be there, and you're kind of going, wait a minute. That's when we start to get a little more critical in terms of the intellectual power of, maybe in those cases, publication became more important than design. And that's a serious problem.
Yes.
When publication becomes more important than design, then you start ending up having things in there because you're supposed to have them in there. And problems begin to occur. Especially when things go in there. My favorite is porting in Call of Cthulhu sanity rules into a game where they have no place whatsoever. But somebody in the game design team, probably the friend, said they have to be in there. So there they are.
Yeah.
So I think that we can be a little critical. I think that we can also, you mentioned, the example I always give is the German version, which is Der Schwarze Auge, the black eye, which is their big, extremely obvious port of RuneQuest / D&D into German. And then it is published as the first big German role-playing game.
Okay.
And you have the same thing here in Sweden. And I cannot fault either game. They are clearly, especially in their earliest versions, they are clearly labors of love. The person who's doing it is working out of the purest of motives. And the trouble is, though, is that they are very much taking them as almost holy texts, of the way to do it. And it's a kind of an artificial exposure to role-playing, especially if it's a high-end production. So the first thing that a Swedish role player saw, culturally speaking, was this big, shiny hardback book. Well, I'm used to role-playing being represented by the crappiest little pamphlets that were, bootlegged illegally on photocopy machines And now I could be a little too romantic about that and say, yeah, back in the days when we did this on the street, and that's not quite what I mean. What I mean is to recognize that role-playing game design is going on all the time. We call it play. It's going on all the time, and that most people are running around with a half-written set of notes in their backpacks.
Yeah.
And that we should be in a culture where these things become visible, visible and playable. And then you will see a lot more thinking and talking about role-playing than you thought was going to happen. And that these big high-end productions can become the side effects that they are supposed to be, not the nature of the publication and the nature of the hobby that they have become. This is a form of unusual colonialism. It's not colonialism in the British sense of the British Raj in India or something like that. This is Cold War colonialism. This is Marshall Plan colonialism. Yes, we will, provide all this money for you to set up your economy in your country. Oh, by the way, this economy in your country is going to be completely tied to our banks. And not only that, but you're going to take these Big Macs and you're going to like them. And we get to sell our things to you. And you are going to get these expensive versions of them. And you are going to think that is the baseline. And so all of a sudden, the idea that there could be an Italian role-playing design scene based on Italian cinema, I'm talking from experience here, and talking to role-playing authors. And I say, base this on Italian cinema, not American cinema. And they say, Italian cinema? That sucks. That's useless, tiny. What are you talking about? And I say, what are you talking about? Where do you think American cinema learned what horror is, except from Dario Argento and Mario Bava? Where do you think American cinema redefined the Western after it had gone cold, except from Sergio Leone? Italian cinema is the shit. It's awesome. Most of Hollywood cinema is ported from Italian cinema.
Right.
You should be rating your role-playing game, your Italian role-playing game about movies on that. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you proud of this? And that's something that frustrates me a lot. I mean, I look around at the convention, as I said before, the excitement that I see about role-playing design is very strong, but I want to see into the backpacks. I want to see those. I want to see those and say, I think there's a design scene here that you guys don't even know is as strong as it is. And once they come out of there, all this talk about, only a few people want to talk about role-playing theory. Oh, no. Yeah. They all do. They all will.
Yeah.
So does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. There are so many things that I would like to,
we have plenty of time. Jag bor här. Nu bor jag här. Vi har all många tid.
Vi har alltid i världen. No. But actually, I think that we have to round
stop
this
now.
up.
I think so too, yes.
Definitely. But there are so many things that I would like to continue to talk about. Let's continue some other time.
Excellent. Does it feel as though we have at least addressed the idea of why anybody might care?
Well,
That's what we were trying to do, I think.
So, I think so. But I think we've touched on many things that for me have been enlightening. So
excellent.
I hope that our listeners as well will think so.
I am so happy to be here.
Thank you. Thanks so much.